Welcome to another podcast. This is Real Wealth Podcast with Mike Proctor. We're sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning. And today I have the Mr. Richard Coe with us today. He is a retired financial advisor. He had Coe Financial Services and has since transitioned into retirement. And so we're going to have a really great time talking today about lessons he's learned over living the best life possible, over his life to this point, and also building his own business. He went out on his own. He did what we did much earlier than we did it. And he is actually one of the main points of inspiration for me to do what we did in starting our own registered investment advisory firm. So welcome today, Richard, and good morning to you.
Mike, good morning to you. Glad to be here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I will tell you, even before we get started, Mike, I have appreciated friendship with you, and I've had respect for you for a number of years. From early on, you struck me as a learner. You ask a lot of good questions, and I guess you're probably going to ask me some questions today, so we'll have some fun, won't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I was just thinking this morning, interestingly enough, Craig Coral.
Yes.
Yeah, at one point I interviewed with him, and he had me do the Colby. And
oh, good for him.
My highest score by far was the Fact Finder score.
What was your number? Do you remember?
I think it was like an 8 or a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
If that's what it was. It was up.
Pretty high.
It was really high.
Yeah, I'm a 7.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So
that's a great tool. My business coach, by the way, I had a number of different business coaches over the years, but the last one I had was by far the best. And he made extensive use of the Colby. Whenever he got started with anyone, he had them do the Colby. So I've appreciated that, valued that. It's been helpful for me to understand myself and others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's so many helpful tests out there, but that was one that for whatever reason just like popped in my head. I was like, I guess it kind of makes sense if this is a natural field to ask questions, and with that kind of a propensity to learn and investigate.
One of the statements I used from time to time is because the right questions lead to the right answers. So it's wonderful to ask good questions, and beneficial to the one who asks questions, beneficial to the one who has to think it through and come up with answers.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes I learned from Philip Cernicki at RPS Financial Group back when I started with another company. I got my start with Northwestern Mutual for 5.5 years, as you know. But his a quote that stuck with me from him was, 95% of the solution is a well-defined problem.
Yes. Good thought. Good thought.
Well, anyways, yeah. So I'm so glad you took some time out of your busy retired lifestyle to come in this morning and record. So, as you know, we were talking about pre-roll that this podcast centers a lot on how do we live the best life possible with the time we have left. And you have less time left than you used to. And I would imagine maybe you even value it a little bit more today than you used to. Take it less for granted today than you used to. Because when you were maybe my age, you had a lot of time left. A whole lot more time left. Maybe not a whole lot, maybe twice. But yeah. So let's talk about that. How do you live the best life possible with the time you have left today?
I like that question. Just recently, I turned 73. And I will tell you, every day is a gift, Mike. I am very grateful for the life that I have, and I do take time very seriously. So I want to make the best use of my time. Many years ago, I memorized a psalm, a verse in one of the Psalms, teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So I ask our Father to lead me and guide me, that I might make wise use of the time, wise use of the days. And I find that I have lots of good opportunities during the day. So there's some people that transition into so-called retirement and have more time on their hands than they know what to do with. that has not been my experience. So I have plenty of things I like to do. So, but I enjoy reading. I enjoy being with people, and a lot of my time is with people. You and I have a friendship that goes back a number of years, and we have a number of mutual friends. So I find it very enjoyable and stimulating and mutually beneficial to be with others. Some of the people, one of my friends just recently turned 97. So, I find that I can be learning from people older than I am, and I can also be learning from people younger than I am. But so time with people, very important to me. Time with family and friends and reading. I always want to keep learning. There's so much to learn, and I've enjoyed that whole process of learning. And I'm now at a stage in life where I have the privilege of passing a few things on. I particularly enjoy working with younger men and investing in them. And it's just a great joy and a privilege to find people that want to take their life seriously, that want to make the best use of their time. So I'm a very grateful man at age 73.
I know that I think we had your friend who's now 97 to that men's group we've been meeting with.
We did, yeah. Marvin Martin, a well-known man, and he probably doesn't have much time left with us on this side, but what a great man. I had a conversation with him just recently, and certainly have learned a lot from him over the years. And many people in Wichita have. I'm one of many who've been blessed to have a friendship with Marvin Martin.
Yeah, what do you think's the biggest lesson you've learned from your relationship with Marvin?
I would say one of the things is to keep thinking. Marvin got serious about Jesus at age 44. He was already a very successful attorney, a labor attorney, but he's one who's gone through life thinking. So that's just what he's modeled has been significant to me. One thing I also learned from him many years ago, at least started to learn, let's put it this way, was the ability to say no. Marvin was the kind of person who liked to help people, but he also had a pretty clear sense of what he should say yes to and what he should say no to. And then sometimes I might ask him to do something that mattered to me, and he had the freedom to say no. And that impressed me. And then I would say the way he looked at Scripture and the way he was able to kind of put things together in a way that he could transfer and communicate concepts that other people might have missed. So I just found myself thinking in the last few weeks, really, about something he communicated about husbands and wives in regard to marriage. And he would say that the husband is to lead and the wife to follow. And as she follows, he is inclined to love her. And as she experiences love, she is inclined to respect her. And then as he provides, she increases. And then he praises and she glows. And that's something that Marvin communicated to me and others years ago, but sometimes you see same thing and then forget it. Well, I just recently looked at that again and wanted to remember that because I think that's good advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. How long have you been friends with Marvin?
Well, I moved back to Wichita. I grew up in Wichita, Mike, but I moved back to Wichita from Chicago in 1978. And then not too long after I moved back, I was actually back in Chicago, and turns out I met Marvin and some others from Wichita in the Chicago area in connection with a Leighton Ford reach out in the Chicago area. Leighton Ford was later to come to Wichita for a reach out in Wichita. A reach out would be kind of like an evangelistic campaign. Leighton Ford, the brother-in-law of Billy Graham.
Okay.
So I first met Marvin in that area, and then we became much better acquainted, really, in connection with the Leighton Ford reach out. A fellow by the name of Roger Fredrickson was kind of coordinating all that, but Roger enlisted a number of pastors and a number of lay leaders. And so that was how I first really started to get acquainted with Marvin. He and his wife, Ellie, were at Deb's and my wedding. We were married in May of 1982. But our friendship really blossomed, Mike, after my dad passed. My dad passed at 81 in 1994. And I remember Marvin calling me. Marvin would be 24 years older than I. Marvin called and he said, well, after things calm down some, I'd like to take you out for lunch. So sure enough, he called. He called a few weeks after my dad had passed and took me out for lunch. And that's when our friendship really started to develop. And he initiated with me on numerous occasions, and I would initiate with him. It was never just a meet every week, something like that. But both of us felt the freedom to stay connected with each other. And I would say there's been even more of that since I sold my business. I sold my business a little over 2 years ago. And we've had quite a lot of time together over the last few years. Many, many lunches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there was at least one or two periods there where you were looking at it as maybe one of your last lunches, right? Because there were points there when, you know, when he was not doing as well.
Well, there've actually been a few times, Michael, when I thought I was saying goodbye to him for the last time.
Right.
And the last time I saw him actually was pretty emotional for me because he was expressing gratitude. He did this with some others too, but just expressing gratitude for our friendship. Wow, it touched me up. I was trying to hold back the tears, and at one point he said, "Hey, it's okay to cry." Well, by then I didn't have any choice. I got to the parking lot, and I was literally sobbing, and tears of gratitude for his life and for his friendship to me and so many others. I think he's had an enormous impact on the spiritual life of many of us in Wichita, and I think his impact will continue to endure. One of his sons, Tom, called me just yesterday and kind of briefed me, but I think he's in his final days now on this earth. But he's going to live forever, just like you will and just like I will. So I'll see him again. You'll see him again.
Of course. What do you think it was about that relationship that brought that level of endearment?
Good question.
Yeah.
I experienced love and grace and did not experience judgment. I would say that he knew me well, but I was always experiencing grace. I was privileged to have a wonderful father, Mike. I really did. A loving father, wonderful father. But, in his role, there was often correction, and it was appropriate. That was a good thing for him to do as father. But I think I just experienced more judgment from him. And Marvin, I could get perspective from him. He would say he was reluctant to give advice, but he would provide perspective. And I could ask him questions. I could tell him about different things. And I think it's pretty fair to say I did not experience much judgment. I experienced a lot of love and a lot of grace. And we need that. I trusted him, and there was an environment of safety and trust. I remember once, Mike, I was on the way to both Lawrence and Kansas City. My mother had actually gone into the hospital, and Deb and I were there at the hospital, and she was going to have a procedure done. And I was going to be speaking to a group of people in Kansas City that evening, and I had an appointment in Lawrence. Deb didn't want me to leave the hospital. And I'm thinking, well, she can handle this. And so I left the hospital. Deb was not pleased, but I left the hospital and was driving up. And then I had second thoughts. I think I was past Emporia. And I called Marvin. I just wanted some perspective. I knew Deb would like me to turn around and come home. And I'm thinking, I've got a couple commitments. And I called Marvin. And we talked a little bit. And he did ask, well, what are your priorities? And after he asked that question, I turned around. I called Deb and said, I'm coming back. I called the person I was to see in Lawrence. I called my contact person in Kansas City. I'm pretty sure it's Tracy Mann that was my contact there. Tracy, as you may know, is a congressman from the 1st District of Kansas, covers most of the state. Wonderful, wonderful friend. And there was a group there in Kansas City that a number of them I'd known for many years, and they'd asked me to come up and speak to them, and it was something I was very much looking forward to do. But at any rate, made the call, turned around, was always glad that I did. But that's just an example of where I had a felt need for input from someone older and wiser, and could call Marvin, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how, maybe to put it in a different way, there's this cycle of, now you said correction. You didn't say that your dad shamed you in any way when you were growing up, but there is a cycle of often when there's felt judgment that we shame one another.
Right.
And then that leads to one person shaming the next and shaming the next. And it's
Yes.
it's a cascading cycle. But on the other hand, when you have a relationship where there's a level of security in grace and what was the other word you said?
Well, trust. I mentioned trust.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, non-judgmental, grace
Right.
filled relationship where there's that guidance, there's that advice, maybe not advice, maybe
Perspective.
not perspective. Thank
Yes.
you. And that just allows for the space that, I mean, say when you needed that space, you're torn inside, you can
Right.
feel the conflict and you're questioning, where do I go with this?
Yes.
And then you call your friend, and he gives you that space and perspective to just look at it for what it is of what is your priority? What are your values? And then you can immediately make that choice
Right.
without him saying, what are you doing? Why are you leaving your wife at the hospital?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. You've got it. You're understanding what I'm saying. I did not feel judgment. I felt comfortable putting the issue before him, and it was still my decision. So we need that, if we can avoid defensiveness and actually get input from someone else, that's a wonderful thing. And, as I was driving downtown here, Mike, to be with you today, I found myself thinking, in my 20s, I did have some counsel, and I had a mentor of sorts. But from my 30s on, I've had far more of that, and we all need help from one another. So I'm very grateful that I've had wonderful people, not just Marvin, but wonderful people involved in my life over the years. And we need each other. We need the Lord, and we need each other.
Absolutely. We were not meant to do it alone.
Right.
And any time I feel myself resigning to feeling like isolation is the answer, I'm like, okay, that's not going well. We need to,
right.
So, we need that community. Typically I talk with Eric on Tuesdays, but he called kind of late last night and we wound up talking this morning instead. But we have a very similar relationship and we talk at least once a week.
Yeah. And what a privilege to have a friend like Judge Eric Milgren. I mean, he is a wonderful, wonderful person. And like Marvin, he's helped a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's incredible the amount of time he actually spends on investing in younger men,
right?
Especially in helping them to grow up. Because we all need that. Without having that in relationship, it's got to be modeled and experienced. You can't just tell someone, hey, you need to go stop judging people and be nice and, like give everyone love and acceptance. But if you never get that from somebody else, you don't have it to pass along.
You can't pass on what you haven't received.
That's right.
Yes.
And so it's really awesome that you guys take the time to do that. And so I'm grateful, and it's so different. It's a completely different dynamic than do this, don't do that.
Yes. Yes.
Stop doing that.
I recently was with someone, a physician who had retired about 3 years ago, so about a year before I did. And he said, your work is what you do, or you are what you do, I think is how he put it. You are what you do. And for him, it was a very challenging adjustment to not be working. And he said, now I work for my wife. But, I'm very much of the mind that our identity is so important. Who really are we? And many people do find their identity in work, and work is extremely important. I'm very grateful for the career that I had, but I want to find my identity in Christ, and I want to understand who I really am. And I think the way to do that is to see what God says about who I am. So that's been increasingly important to me, Mike, in recent years. Who does God say that I am? And if I have some thoughts as to who I am, and God has some thoughts as to who I am, who would be more likely to be accurate? Well, I would say God has a more accurate perception of who I am than I do. So I need his help to understand who I really am.
Absolutely. So kind of along those lines, you had how long of a career in financial services?
Well, I became a certified financial planner in 1983. I actually had a couple of years in financial services before that, but basically we went from 1981 until 2020. So, pretty close to 40 years.
Mm. I'd say I remember 1981 well, but it didn't exist yet.
I understand. You've got many years ahead of you, and fortunately, you've got a great beginning. You are learning and growing, and you have a good business, and you're trustworthy, which is huge, huge, huge. You're a learner, and you're trustworthy. So that's great. But yeah, I enjoyed my career very, very much, Mike. I was kind of a slow starter in my business. I wanted to learn everything about everything before talking with anyone about anything. And I went through my career always wanting to learn more, and there was always more to learn, which is part of the reason I enjoyed it so much. And of course, I enjoyed the interaction with people. I had the privilege within the last couple of weeks, the firm that bought us, Creative Planning, had an open house, and I got to see some of my former clients, which was a joy just to, because it's been a little over 2 years since I sold the business, and just to see some of the clients that I'd worked with over the years, it was a lot of fun to see them. So maybe someday you'll have the same privilege after years and years of working with people. Maybe you'll be at an open house and see some of your former clients. I will tell you this, the years go by very quickly.
I can't believe we've been in business 5 years. I mean, it's, so we're 5.5 in from when I started this, and I'm 12 years into the industry, okay. And coming up on 10 of those being a CFP.
Yes, that's great. I'm glad you have your own business. You have independence, that a higher degree of independence than so many others in this industry have. And so many are in some form or fashion tied to a broker-dealer as opposed to a registered investment advisory firm. And, for me, those, I guess, was roughly the last 10 years when I had a greater degree of independence, and I valued that. And I think that's the best way to go for those that are really professionals in the industry.
I agree. Because part of the reason I did it is because there were opportunities I saw of doing things in a better way.
Yes.
In a way that better serves the consumer that's looking for true full fiduciary advice. They're trusting advisors to, be putting their interests first and to have the level of flexibility that they would presume one has, but maybe they don't always get it. And
Right.
if you're with a company where your options are limited, it's not like you can sit there and tell the client, by the way,
Right.
there's a better option over there. And if I'm really putting you first, I'm going to tell you about it. So that, there were, and oh, by the way, I'd prefer to do it this way, but my compliance department says I have to do it this way.
Right.
Anywho, so there are restrictions compared to where we're at. And I do really value the level of freedom that we have with what we do. And it's a big responsibility.
It is.
And it's a privilege.
Yeah, a responsibility and privilege. And I will tell you, I made mistakes over the years. We all make mistakes. But we want to keep learning and growing and getting better at what we do.
Absolutely. So I asked a little bit about your career. Let's talk about your transition. We'll fast forward to the end of your career. What was it like transitioning from a long-standing financial advising career to being retired?
Yes. Well, first of all, I will tell you, Mike, that my wife, Deb, started advocating for me to sell the business. And initially, I was very reluctant. I'm thinking, I enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm well paid for what I do, so why would I stop? But I've learned over the years to listen to Deb, and so she was advocating for that. I was reluctant. I went from reluctance to acceptance to excitement. By the time we actually sold the business, I was excited about it. And wow, the market was in bad shape when we actually closed the sale of the business. The COVID had just hit, so this was in March of 2020, and the stock market was way, way down. The bond market was even worse. A lot of people don't realize this, but liquidity had pretty much dried up in the bond market. It was before it was the Fed to the rescue. So at any rate, by the time we closed, I was very excited about it. And as you know, Mike, many people, it's a difficult transition from an active, meaningful, fulfilling career to so-called retirement. But for me, it was not difficult. I think I transitioned pretty much immediately and was pretty much immediately enjoying the new chapter in life with plenty to do, things I enjoyed doing. Some of the things I was doing, I was already doing, but I had more time. One of the big differences is, in my career, often I had to scramble, and I'm sure you know what I mean by that. Sometimes you just got so much going on and so much that you need to be doing. It's just kind of scramble, scramble, scramble. And I stay busy today, but I don't have to scramble very often. Once in a while, there's a little bit of that, but not very much of it. So I'm able to set my own pace, and I can even take a nap during the day if I want to, and sometimes I do.
Yeah, naps are good. I hear they're great for your brain health.
Well, I think there's benefit to them, yes. So it's just a wonderful season of life for me, and I try not to take any days for granted. You're at my age, health can change very quickly. But at this point, I'm in good health. Deb and I get to do a little travel. We were at Lake Tahoe just last week and celebrating my 73rd birthday, and had a wonderful, wonderful time with my brother and his Wichita girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's been fun to have him come out.
Yes, it really has. I've had a great relationship with my brother for many years, but it's become closer and closer over the years. He lost his wife due to a 7-month battle with cancer back in the fall of 2020. And so our close relationship became even closer.
Speaking of your brother going through a difficult time with losing his wife, think back on your career. So you've got several years to consider, but what was an unexpected challenge you found yourself coming up against, and how was it for you to work through that? What did you learn?
Well, a big challenge I had was not exactly, it really wasn't career related, but it was in the midst of my career. In the fall of 2011, I had a battle with acute insomnia, and it was very difficult for me. It was one of those things I would have thought, well, this happens to other people. It doesn't happen to me, but it did. And I had a bunch of crazy thoughts. And there was a time I thought, my best days are behind me. And I was 62 at the time. So that was a very challenging time for me. And I got good input from one man in particular. And something very good came out of all of that, Mike. I was, first of all, it was hard to keep at it with my work, but I was able to, even though I was not sleeping well. Thank God I was able to continue in my work and keep at it. But out of that really came a growing realization that Christ actually lived in me, that there was an eternal person living in me, and he actually wanted to live his life through me. And that wasn't just an overnight awakening, but a gradual awareness of that truth. So I would say that although the fall of 2011 was a very difficult time for me, the last now almost 11 years have really been, I would say, the best 11 years of my life. Sometimes those problem times in life are actually springboards to something better. And oftentimes we do need the problems to learn. And we have the problems, we don't want them. But a friend of mine that is now with the Lord, he passed just a few years ago at age 90. But he talked about the CNS gang, and he referred to CNS, he used that terminology, but it meant circumstances and situations. And he would talk about how our Father uses the circumstances and situations of life, the trials and tribulations of life, to actually help us. So none of us want those big problems, but oftentimes they work for our benefit. And that was very much my experience. There were some career challenges along the way that were more specific career challenges. One came very, very early in my career because I was such a slow starter. And at the time, I was, in my early days, I was affiliated with Mass Mutual. And I was such a slow starter. There was a meeting with the general agent and the assistant general agent and the head of training, and they used a big word, Mike. They said, "We have never seen anyone start so slowly and make it."
Right.
So that was unnerving. It was intimidating. Somehow I managed to get out the words, I don't know exactly how I'm going to make it, but I'm trusting God that I will. So yeah, there are other challenges along the way, but for the most part, I really enjoyed my work. I really did. I know there are a lot of people that don't enjoy their jobs, but I had the privilege of working with wonderful people, wonderful clients, and had a good team, a small team, but a good team, and got to try to help people. And, as I said earlier, yes, I made mistakes. We all make mistakes, but it was a joy to be involved with people in a field that was very interesting to me. Mike, I got interested in stocks while in middle school. I was at Robinson, and my dad explained to me what a stock was. And I still remember the first three companies in which I invested. One was Western Casualty, a property and casualty company in Fort Scott, Kansas, and then Ford, the automobile company, and Cessna. And Cessna may have actually been the second one, but for many years I owned Cessna stock, and it was like an elevator, up, down, up, down, up, down. But it was fascinating to me that I could own a little piece of a company and make money. And I enjoyed that. So I've been one that's been in stocks almost all of my life, really from middle school on. I still enjoy it. I'm no longer in the business, but it's still a privilege to be an investor and to let money work for me. That's exciting.
Yeah. Money makes a terrible master, but an excellent slave.
Yes. It sure helps. It sure helps. I've known people with a lot of money who were, in effect, controlled by their money, and it's a sad thing. I think of one very wealthy person in particular who's passed now, but about all he could talk about was money and his deals. And even though I was interested in the subject of money, this person was kind of boring for me because that was his life, and that was to a large extent it was, and that's sad. But properly viewed, money can be a very, very helpful tool. I like the way you put it.
Well, I borrowed that quote from someone else. I don't know who it is off the top of my head, but how do you view money? You've had this long career dealing with it. You learned from a young age.
Right.
Today, you are set by most people's standards. I don't know anything specifically. So how do you view money now that you're on the other side of things?
Yeah.
And
I like to see money as a tool, as a resource. We are in a position where we can give money away. I've taken giving seriously for years. I'll tell you that story very briefly, but I remember being in Chicago and talking with my girlfriend at the time. She was farther along in her journey with Jesus than I was, and I remember her asking me, do you tithe? And I said, no, but I give what I feel like. And she said, well, that's probably pretty easy to do. But then she made an interesting point. She said, most likely, as the years go by, you'll be making more money. And it's probably a whole lot easier for you to start tithing now than it would be later. And as a result of that conversation, I did start that. Now, today, I believe that tithing is actually part of the law, and we're no longer under the law. We're in a new covenant, and Jesus has fulfilled the law. So I no longer view that as something I have to do to please God, but I have the joy of giving, and it is a joy for me. And we're at a stage in life where we can and we do. So I see money as a wonderful tool, and I've been thinking recently about how we can use some of what we have just for experiences with our children and grandchildren. We've done some of that, but I want to do more of that while we still have the health. And, I like to be able to have breakfasts and lunches with, people like you. And it's nice to be able to pick up the tab for that. I remember there was another fellow that was something of a mentor to me, an oil man by the name of Bill Brenson, and we'd meet at the Petroleum Club, and Bill would say, you pray, and I'll pay. You pray, and I'll pay.
It's a pretty good deal.
It was a good deal. I liked that. I was very willing to pray and was glad that he would pay. And now I'm on the other side of that, and so I get to host people from time to time for breakfasts and lunches, and Deb and I often do that with dinner with friends. So it's just a joy to be involved with people. I highly, highly value authenticity in relationships, Mike, and when people trust one another and can be real with one another, when they can take the mask off, boy, it's a beautiful thing. So I really welcome that. And Deb and I are blessed with some authentic friends.
Yeah. And what a blessing. I mean, and there's so many guys that whether you're talking about Marvin Martin or the men's group that gets together on Friday morning. And just for the listeners, this group, I mean, it's been going on, 6 years now?
Right.
And I mean, it started off with just 5, 6 guys, and it's grown to regularly 20 plus guys showing up Friday morning, 6:30 a.m. Eric and Denise often is supplying some food, and then some other guys get the coffee together. But yeah, it's been a weekly, ongoing, completely voluntary. Whoever shows up. But 20 plus guys, and I don't know how many guys have total come through there, but it's well over 100, I think, pretty easily. Because you guys tried to count it up when they were trying to move, because the guys that were hosting were meeting at their house, and then the house got sold that they were renting, and they had to let the next people know that there are guys that on occasion show up, and we literally tried to get a hold of everybody, and we couldn't. So if there's people that show up Friday morning at 6:30 a.m., sorry. Part of the hazard of buying this house, I suppose. So, but it's been a really special group. You guys have with your, and that's the other thing that's been really cool between you and Eric, with your levels of influence and your relationships. You've been able to bring in some really, really neat guys with some really cool careers and perspective and stories, and a couple of them have come on the podcast and got 1 or 2 more scheduled from
Good for you.
that you've had in there that are going to come on here, and so but yeah, it's amazing when you invest in genuine relationship in context of walking with one another. What can come of that? It's really, really incredible.
That's true. That's true. Jesus had some friends he was very close to, and basically, after his resurrection, they were so impacted by his life, death, resurrection, and ascension that changed the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with 12.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe your business, your entrepreneurship side. So you started off in a broker-dealer context, right?
Well, I started with what was then
before they were merged, right?
Yeah. Well, I fairly early in my career, Mass Mutual came up with a broker-dealer. Mm-hmm. And MML Investor Services. But I started with a life insurance company, then it had a broker-dealer, and I was Mass Mutual's first investment specialist.
You were?
I was.
Wow.
Right.
Hey, that's a big claim to fame. All right.
So, but I was with Mass Mutual a number of years, and then some different broker dealers over the years. The last broker dealer I was with, the wonderful broker dealer, Cambridge Investment Research, and then learned about this world of even more independence, moving away from the broker dealer world. Your listeners may or may not know, but if you're selling financial products and investment products, you have to be affiliated with a broker dealer, and it's a middleman. And some people can move away from a middleman. Not everyone needs a middleman. And as we were talking earlier, there are some advantages of independence and not having a middleman. A different regulatory environment too. I think a more responsible, more prudent, more reasonable regulatory environment in the registered investment advisor world as opposed to the broker dealer world. So I experienced different aspects of the financial services profession, and there's many different ways to do the business, and lots of wonderful people in the business. Having said that, not everyone is, and so people can be abused, so you for listeners, you want to work with good people, and you want to work with someone you can trust and count on and communicate well with. So I have fond memories of my business career. Having said that, I really haven't missed it. I enjoy seeing former clients, but it's surprising to me that I haven't missed it. I mean, I thought I would have plenty of things I wanted to do, but I'm still a little surprised that I haven't missed it.
Yeah, and I wonder if some of that is because it felt like you were doing life with your clients anyways, and you're still doing life with people. I mean, so it may be a different function, but I think your relationships have had some continuity.
Some continuity, and I think too that I was already investing in people even before I retired. I've over the years I've tried to be intentional with friendships. So I think I was already doing something that I wanted to do more of. So that certainly made the transition much easier for me than it might be for some others.
Here's a question for you. So in our industry, part of what goes along with giving advice is making phone calls to people that you're not doing business with yet to set up appointments to try to do business with them. So that is in our industry often the least appreciated part of it.
Right.
So how did that go for you? Did you love that part? If you didn't love it, how did you overcome that, or how did you deal with it?
Well, this answer might surprise you, Mike, but I actually did very little of that. I did very little of that, and I did not like it. I did not enjoy that. I know people that have made many, many calls and just, call, and it's kind of a numbers process, and find some people that are interested and want to take a next step. I actually have respect for people who do that, but I was somehow able to not do much of that, and it still worked for me. One thing I did pretty early in my career was I had a schedule of seminars, I think over 16 months. So I had an outline of dates and times and topics, and then got the word out on those seminars. And one of the reasons I did that, this was in the early 80s, was I was affiliated with a life insurance company, but I wanted people to understand that I did a whole lot more than life insurance. So the seminars were on the stock market, the bond market, on estate planning, on taxes, on real estate, just quite a variety of topics. And I didn't get much new business directly as a result of those seminars, but what it did was it helped people understand that I had a broader approach. And in those days, in the early 80s, that was unusual. People thought of life insurance people as life insurance people. People thought of stockbrokers as stockbrokers, et cetera. And I was one of the relatively early certified financial planners, not only in Wichita, but in Kansas, and really, in terms of the whole country, I was early as a certified financial planner. That was a very good move. I already had a background in financial matters. I had banking experience with the largest bank in Chicago, had an MBA from the University of Chicago in finance and accounting. So I had a fair amount of background already, but the certified financial planner designation was very, very educational, very beneficial to me. And it was helpful not only from a credential and credibility standpoint, but just an educational standpoint. So it's a wonderful program. And you did that, 10 years ago, did you say?
Yeah, I passed the test coming up on, it'll be 10 years in about 2 months.
Okay.
And then officially conferred several months later.
Right, yeah.
What's it say? March of 2013.
Okay.
Is the official.
Okay. Yeah. And I think I completed my work for it in 1983, and I think the official ceremony and all was in 84. So big gap in time in terms of when that happened for me and when it happened for you. But it's a wonderful program. And so many people in the industry do not do that. And I can understand why they don't, because it's challenging enough just to be viable in the business and do what you need to do.
Right.
But there's so many things to learn, and so many things that when you understand this or that, you can be of more benefit to your clients. So I commend you for having done that. I'm certainly very grateful that I did.
Yeah, it was something that really just made sense to do it. And in the earlier I could invest in it in my career, I found the better. So I really did do it about as early as I could,
right,
because I got in under another CFP, so I got under their 2-year rule. Otherwise, it takes 3 if you're not under direct supervision of another CFP.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really still very pleased with that, and I don't think I'll ever give that designation up.
Well, and you have continuing education requirements, so you keep learning.
That's right. And we learn internally here, aside from anything CE creditable, we've got 2 other CFPs on the team as well. Dayton and Linden are both CFPs,
yes,
and then James Oswald has started his curriculum as well.
Great.
But yeah, we do a book club internally where pretty much every Friday morning, we've moved it to 10 a.m., but we read a chapter in a book, discuss it, but we all pick the book or the
great
area of study together, and that's part of our culture. That's part of who we are.
Super.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, and
well, that's something that we didn't do much of, but I think it's a wonderful idea. Good for you.
Yeah. Thanks. What is an unexpected lesson you learned?
An unexpected lesson. Well, I was thoroughly schooled in what's called modern portfolio theory at the University of Chicago. I was exposed to the thinking of a number of Nobel Prize winners. And I thoroughly, thoroughly embraced that, Mike. And then relatively late in my career, I was exposed to, got well acquainted with a couple men financial advisors in the Kansas City area. And one of them in particular had done a tremendous amount of number crunching, a tremendous amount of research. And bottom line, they became very convinced that you could, from the market itself, you could learn some things that would give you the ability to make timely defensive moves. They were very much of the mind that the greatest risk for a stock market investor is the risk of a recession. And they became convinced that the market itself would give you clues on the recession risk, and you could take defensive moves and thereby provide protection. And even though I was thoroughly trained in modern portfolio theory, I became pretty well convinced that they were onto something. So we started using some of their tools and metrics to manage money that way. And I will tell you that it was a mistake. We made defensive moves, and most of the time it didn't help. It hurt rather than helped. And so that was, there's a saying that is time in the market as opposed to timing the market. And I would say we tried, but we made some mistakes on that front. So I learned a few lessons.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't too detrimental.
Well, people like the idea of providing protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that that can never be helpful. But I think in general, determining how much risk a person is comfortable with and then basing their decisions on comfort level with risk and also what they need to do. Some people need to take more risk than they want to take if they're going to meet their financial goals. You understand that. But I would say in our experience that some of our clients, we made mistakes in being too defensive on their behalf. It hurt them and it hurt our business too. I mean, we were most of the last 10 years, our compensation was based on assets under management. And if we made mistakes that hurt the client, it hurt us too. We were aligned that way. We embraced the metrics of this firm in Kansas City. And for the most part, it was a mistake. But that's part of life. We do make mistakes. Hate to make mistakes, but it happens.
Yeah, it's unavoidable, and hopefully we can learn from them and do better next time.
That's right. That's right.
I do have a crystal ball over there.
Actually, you do. I hadn't noticed that, but I know that you know how to properly view it, Mike.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Yes.
Most of the time I just ignore it.
Right. Right.
Of course, it's a bit of a joke, a prop.
Yes.
Yeah. I can be smart alecky on occasion with clients and go bring it out on the table.
There you go.
But
right. We all like to think about what might happen, and I still do the same. I still pay some attention to financial markets. I still have some opinions on it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it is, by and large, an efficient marketplace. Knowledge that's out there is, for the most part, priced in.
Yes.
And
the market responds very, very quickly to new information.
It does. And so trying to outsmart the quant traders, the high speed, everything that has been programmed in there. When I was at K-State, and this was back in 2008 or 9, it was a a career fair, and these guys were intentionally looking for people with an IQ of like north of about 160.
Whoa.
Because what they do in the companies in, I think, Overland Park, it's called TradeBot. And I, just by chance, I did happen to see where that office is, but at the time, now it's privately held, they've never lost money one day. And they've got these guys who are like mathematicians, statisticians, and they've got them programming with like 18 screens up at their workstation, looking for correlation, looking for, cause effect relationships, and programming these machines to just trade on if this signal happens, this is going to happen. And since they opened their doors, I don't know, maybe it was like 01 or something like that, or 2000. It was somewhere around there when they started. So don't quote me on that. I guess you can look on Wikipedia, but but it's these guys that's all they do is they program. These quantitative guys just program all day long, and they make money hand over fist. And they've actually never lost. When I talked to them, they had not lost money one single day.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Truly, truly, truly amazing.
So to think that we're trying to beat that by trying to like time the market or whatever, that's really tough. There are things I think that make sense. So when we look at, do we think the Fed is going to continue this interest rate hike? I think they will continue to do that. And so we can make portfolio shifts that are going to mitigate risk because we take an income-based approach. Okay. We look at income that our clients are projected to need. And then we offer, of course, a little bit of buffer there. Make sure that whether it's bonds, cash, whatever, they're going to have that liquidity over the next 5 to 7 years.
Good for you.
And then beyond that, we're shooting for equities.
Right.
Some clients, are comfortable being a little more conservative than that, and that's fine. It comes down to what can they sleep with, or make sure they're not missing any sleep over the deal.
Yeah. But basically, what I'm hearing you say is you build in some protection by what are the needs in the coming years, and then to the extent that you have protection there, you've got much more freedom to be in stocks.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's great.
It's not that when you're retirement age, quote unquote, that you need to be conservative all of a sudden. That's not our approach.
Good.
Even though there was some levels of training I received when I was early in the career
that suggested that
enforced that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, but if someone is 65, the odds are a couple of 65 years old. Odds are pretty good. Someone's going to get into their 90s. So there can be many, many years. There's plenty of time to still be invested in stocks. And most people at that age need to have money in stocks for it to work.
Absolutely. And so, and I'm really grateful for eMoney is the planning software we use that we can show people visually
good for you.
As we make changes.
That is a great tool.
Yeah.
That really is. That's great that you use that. Yeah. We use something else, but I have a lot of respect for eMoney and eMoney users.
All right. Well, it's been a really great, rich conversation. A lot of different topics with you today, Richard. And actually, I'm drinking out of your son's mug.
Legacy Life Legal. Yeah. It's fun. Our son, Doug, with Legacy Life.
Or Legacy Legal.
Legacy Legal, excuse me. He's an estate planning attorney. And so, common business interest. I have another son in the Atlanta area who's a wholesaler with Fidelity. So with both sons, I have a natural interest in their careers. Mm-hmm. So, but nice having Doug right here in Wichita.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you've got his mug.
Give him a quick shout out. That's all.
Yes.
Any closing thoughts for you?
Well, Mike, grateful for you and our friendship, for the work that you're doing, your desire to help clients, for the team that you have built. And I have enjoyed this. It's been fun to visit. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, hopefully, I don't think any of those questions caught you too off guard.
It was fun.
Good. Yeah, it was fun. So we're going to go ahead and wind it down. And thanks for joining us for another podcast episode of Real Wealth Podcast, sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning, where we're here to help our clients make wise financial decisions. All right. Thank you.